For 10 years I poured my soul into building a design agency with my wife and my best friend. We were a family. Then I discovered their affair. But the cheating was just the beginning. It was a smokescreen for a much darker betrayal, a conspiracy to systematically erase me from my own life, orchestrated by the one person I should have been able to trust most. This isn't just another story about an affair. It's about a cold-blooded corporate takedown disguised as a messy divorce. They thought I was a broken man, but they never expected me to create a hit podcast about it. Listen to the whole story to find out how I used their own secrets to burn their world to the ground. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. The text message that detonated my life wasn't a confession, it was a complaint. I saw it by accident, a flash of a preview on my wife's phone as she left it on the kitchen counter. It was from Liam, my best friend since we were kids, and my business partner. It read, "Is he still buying the working late excuse? This is getting harder to cover. Just get the final papers signed." My heart didn't just sink, it imploded. In that single sterile sentence, the entire architecture of my world collapsed. My wife, Jessica, my best friend, Liam, my company, the design agency the three of us had built from nothing in a garage in a suburb outside of Austin, Texas. It was all a lie. The late nights I thought were spent hustling to land new clients, the business trips they took together that I was too busy to join, the inside jokes that I was suddenly no longer a part of, it all snapped into a new, hideous focus. I had known something was wrong, of course. You always do. It's a low-grade hum of anxiety beneath the surface of your days. It's the way your wife suddenly guards her phone like it's a state secret. It's the way your best friend stops looking you in the eye. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You tell yourself you're tired, stressed from work. You let them gaslight you because the alternative is simply too catastrophic to contemplate. You learn to live with the hum, but a text message like that, it turns the hum into a screaming siren you can no longer ignore. I didn't confront them, not then. I was a coward. For a whole week I walked around in a fog of cognitive dissonance, pretending I hadn't seen it, watching them interact. I watched them in our morning meetings, their professional language now laced with a secret intimacy that was as loud to me as a gunshot. I watched them at dinner, the casual brush of her hand on his arm, the shared glances that lasted a fraction of a second too long. They were performing a play for an audience of one, and I was trapped in the front row, forced to applaud. Jessica and I had been married for 8 years, together for 12. Liam had been my brother in all but blood for 20. We started Triptych Design right out of college with a $1,000 loan and a shared dream. I was the lead creative, the artist. Jessica was the accounts genius, the face of the company. Liam was the strategist, the ruthless closer. We were a perfect team, or so I thought. We had just landed our biggest client, a multi-million-dollar rebranding for a new tech startup. This was supposed to be our moment, the culmination of a decade of grinding work. Now I knew it was something else entirely. It was the end game. The final papers the text mentioned were sitting on my desk. It was a restructuring of our partnership agreement. My father, a powerful and notoriously cutthroat corporate lawyer, had drawn them up. He presented it as a way to protect the business as we scaled up. "It's just a formality, Alex," he'd said, his voice laced with its usual condescending authority. "It gives Jessica and Liam more operational control so you can focus on the creative. It's for your own good. You're an artist, not a businessman." I'd been hearing variations of that my whole life. My father worshipped strength and saw my artistic temperament as a weakness, a flaw. He'd always favored Liam, who shared his killer instinct. He'd praise Liam's ambition while gently mocking my hobbies. I had spent my entire life chasing an approval he was fundamentally incapable of giving. A classic trauma bond I was too enmeshed in to recognize. So when he told me the papers were for my own good, a pathetic, conditioned part of me actually believed him. I was scheduled to sign them on Friday. I felt like I was drowning. The two people I loved most in the world were betraying me, and the one person I should have been able to turn to for help was, unknowingly or not, helping them do it. I was completely, utterly alone. My only anchor was my younger sister, Maya. She was a cybersecurity expert, the family's quiet, brilliant black sheep who had escaped our father's orbit years ago. I called her in a panic, my voice cracking as I told her everything. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Don't sign anything, Alex. Do not sign a goddamn thing, and check their calendars. Cross-reference their expense reports from the last 6 months. They're sloppy, they always are." That night after Jessica was asleep, I did just that. I opened our shared company server, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. My heart pounded with a nauseating mix of fear and a grim, desperate need to know. It didn't take long. Business trips to separate conferences in Chicago, with hotel rooms booked at the same hotel, on the same floor. Expense reports for client dinners for 2, on nights I knew the client was out of the country. It was a digital tapestry of their affair, woven with company money. It was sordid and cliched, and it hurt more than I thought possible. But the real gut punch was in a password-protected folder on Liam's drive. A folder labeled Restructure. It took Maya less than 10 minutes to crack it. Inside wasn't just the partnership agreement my dad had drafted. There were emails between Liam and Jessica, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate. Emails planning their future, a future with my company, my clients, my money. And then I saw it. The email chain that stopped my heart. It was between Liam and my father. Liam was asking for advice on the legal language for a dissolution of partnership, due to creative negligence. My father had replied, line by line, with the exact legal phrasing needed to force a founding partner out with minimal compensation. He wasn't an unwitting participant. He was their architect. He was actively, knowingly helping them destroy his own son. The text message had detonated my life. This email vaporized the rubble. The reason he gave, in cold black and white text, was this: Alex lacks the necessary fortitude to lead. The business is better in your hands. This is what's best for the company. My own father. He wasn't just choosing my best friend over me, he was choosing his ideology of strength over his own blood. My entire life, my desperate, pleading attempts to earn his love, had been a waste of time. I wasn't a son to him. I was a failed investment he was finally ready to write off. The next day, I walked into our sleek, glass-walled office and called a meeting. Jessica and Liam sat across from me at the conference table we'd built with our own hands, their faces masks of feigned concern. "Alex, you look terrible. Is everything okay?" Jessica asked, her voice dripping with counterfeit sympathy. I let the silence hang in the air. Then I slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of the email between Liam and my father. The color drained from their faces. The masks fell away, replaced by raw, ugly panic. Jessica started to stammer, a string of nonsensical apologies. Liam, ever the strategist, immediately went on the attack. The strategist immediately went on the attack? That's illegal. What is wrong with you? He snarled, trying to flip the script to make me the villain. It was classic narcissism. Caught red-handed, their first instinct was to attack the person who had exposed them. What's wrong with me? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. What's wrong is that I thought you were my wife, and I thought you were my brother. What's wrong is that for the last decade, I have poured every ounce of my soul into this place, and into you. And you have been systematically planning to steal it all, with the help of my own father. He stood up. I could feel a strange and terrifying calm settling over me. The calm of a man who has already lost everything. And so here's what's going to happen, I said. And you're going to buy me out. At full market valuation, you're going to wire the money within 48 hours. Or this email, along with your expense reports, your hotel receipts, and a very interesting narrative about corporate malfeasance, goes to every client we have. Starting with the tech startup. I walked out. I didn't look back. I drove straight from the office to a lawyer and filed for divorce. That night, I sat in the silent, empty apartment that no longer felt like my home, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. The betrayal was so total, so absolute it felt unsurvivable. I had lost my wife, my best friend, my company, and my father, all in one fell swoop. They thought they had left me with nothing, and in a way, they were right. But they had also given me a gift. They had given me a story, and I was about to learn how to tell it. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. The first few weeks were a descent into hell. The buyout was a joke. My father, Liam, and Jessica circled the wagons, lawyering up and offering me a fraction of what my share was worth. They presented a unified, fabricated front. I was an unstable, emotional artist who had abandoned his duties, and they were the responsible parties trying to salvage the company. They were gaslighting me on a corporate scale, using my own father's legal power as their primary weapon. Every legal letter was a fresh stab in the back, signed off on by a man who shared my last name. The cognitive dissonance was a physical sickness. I wasn't just fighting for my company, I was fighting an official narrative that painted me as insane. I moved into a small, sterile apartment that smelled of new paint and loneliness. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I just sat in the dark, the conversations, the betrayals, replaying in my head on an endless, torturous loop. The pain was so immense it felt like a living entity, a parasite feeding on my soul. I knew I was close to breaking. It was Maya who saved me. She showed up at my door one night, took one look at my haggard face in the takeout containers littering the floor, and simply said, "No, we're not doing this." She dragged me out of the apartment and into the light. She forced me to talk. Not about the legal strategy, not about the money, but about the feeling, the raw, gut-wrenching pain of it all. "You need to get it out, Alex," she said, her voice firm but kind, "or it's going to eat you alive. Write it down, scream it, I don't care. Just put it somewhere other than inside your own head." That night, I bought a cheap microphone. I sat down at my kitchen table, and with no plan, no script, I just started talking. I talked about love and friendship, and building something from nothing. I talked about the subtle signs of betrayal, the quiet hum of anxiety, the way trust erodes so slowly you don't notice until it's a canyon. I talked about the specific, searing pain of being betrayed not just by a partner, but by a father. I didn't use their real names. I called it the architect and the strategist. I uploaded the rambling, 45-minute audio file to a free hosting site, gave it the generic title Anatomy of a Betrayal, and fell into an exhausted sleep for the first time in weeks. When I woke up, there were a few dozen downloads. A handful of comments. I thought I was the only one. "This is my story. Thank you for putting words to this." It was a tiny flicker of connection in a vast darkness, but it was enough. So I did it again the next week, and the week after that. I called the podcast The Triptych, a bitter homage to what we once were. It became my ritual, my therapy. I dissected the psychology of it all, teaching myself the language as I went. I talked about narcissism, about codependency, about the trauma bond I had with my father. I didn't realize it at the time, but in trying to understand my own story, I was creating a blueprint for others to understand theirs. This raw, unfiltered exploration of an extramarital affairs podcast, but from the inside out, began to resonate. The audience grew from dozens to hundreds, then thousands. People started sharing it, calling it the most honest depiction of betrayal they had ever heard. Meanwhile, the legal battle was a slow, grinding war of attrition designed to bleed me dry. My father was a master at it, but the podcast was giving me something he never counted on: a voice, a purpose. It was also, unexpectedly, generating a small income from listener donations. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The turning point came about 3 months in. Maya, who had been quietly working her own magic in the background, called me. "I've got something," she said, her voice tense with excitement. "Remember how Dad always insisted on using that proprietary ultra-secure communication server for all his firm's business? The one he designed himself? Yeah? The fortress, he calls it." "Well," she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Fortresses are designed to keep people out, but they're also really good at keeping things in." He never imagined one of the system admins would be his own daughter who he taught to code. I found their war room, a private message channel. "It's all there, Alex. Your dad, Jessica, Liam. Every email, every text, every draft of their legal strategy, their whole conspiracy from day one. And the best part? Dad was so arrogant he never enabled the auto-delete feature." She sent me the file. It was thousands of pages long. It was a step-by-step chronicle of their plot, in their own words. They mocked me, they laughed at my pain, they plotted my financial ruin, but they also did something incredibly stupid. In their arrogance, they had discussed using Triptych Design's resources, company funds, company time, to lay the groundwork for a new, separate venture they planned to launch after I was gone. They had documented their own embezzlement, I finally had the weapon I needed. But a quiet legal victory wasn't enough. They hadn't just tried to take my money, they had tried to annihilate my identity and rewrite my reality. Their punishment had to be as public and as psychological as their crime. It had to be a reckoning. For my 50th episode, I announced a special live stream event. The theme was the power of narrative. I knew they would be listening. Their narcissistic arrogance wouldn't allow them to ignore it. My father would want to monitor the damage I was causing. Jessica and Liam would be hate listening, desperate to see me fail. I started the show as I always did, talking about the universal nature of betrayal. I saw the listener count climb into the tens of thousands. Then, about halfway through, I changed my tone. For 49 episodes, I've told you a story about the artist, the architect, and the strategist, I said, my voice steady. Tonight I want to give them their real names. The artist is me, Alex Miller. The company is Triptych Design of Austin, Texas. And the people who conspired to steal my life's work are my wife, Jessica Miller, my best friend, Liam Carter, and the man who orchestrated the entire thing, my own father, renowned attorney Arthur Miller. I let the names hang in the silence. Then, I began to read. I read their emails aloud. I read their text messages. I read their mocking comments about my mental state. I read their detailed plans to bleed me dry. And finally, I read the meticulous logs of them using company funds for their new venture. I narrated the entire story of their conspiracy, with verifiable time-stamped proof, to a massive, captivated audience that included their clients, their colleagues, and their entire social circle. The fallout was instantaneous. It was a digital atom bomb. Their professional and personal lives were incinerated in the space of an hour. The tech startup immediately pulled their multi-million-dollar contract. Other clients followed suit. The Texas State Bar launched an investigation into my father for ethical violations and conspiracy. The brand they had so carefully built was now synonymous with treachery. They were ruined. Not by a lawsuit, but by a story, by the truth. The divorce was finalized quickly after that. They gave me everything I'd originally asked for, desperate to make the scandal go away. I took the money and invested it all. Not in the stock market, but in a new venture. A podcasting network and production house dedicated to helping other people tell their stories. I never spoke to any of them again. I didn't need to. I had taken their greatest weapons, their manipulation, their secrets, their narrative control, and turned them back on themselves. I had found my own voice, and in doing so, I had taken back my life. They set my world on fire, but I used the flames to forge something new. Something stronger, something that was entirely my own.